So the English translation of what Jesus says to Peter is, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. But it really doesn't translate very well. In Aramaic, which is what Jesus would have been speaking, he says, you are Cephas, and upon this Cephas I will build my church. And so I think it makes more sense to say you are rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. You are Peter, and upon this rock makes no sense. But I would like to focus more on the next part of what Jesus says. We usually focus on, you are Peter, and upon this rock. But then Jesus says, the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. Shall not prevail against what? Shall not prevail against my church. He says, and on this rock I will build my church. The gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. Shall not prevail against my church. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. This goes back to the Old Testament. You had the king, but then you had a priest who was responsible for the temple. He had the keys to the temple. And what you open will be open, what you close will be closed. So Jesus says this to St. Peter. He will later say this to the apostles, and that will be later given to priests who can forgive sins or bind sins. But in this point right here, he is saying this to the person of Simon, but also to the office. And that's important. In our entrance antiphon from St. Luke, this is at the Last Supper. The Lord said to Simon Peter, I have prayed for you specifically, that your faith may not fail. And once you have turned back, in other words, he knows he's going to fail. The person, Simon, he's going to fail. He's going to fall away. He's going to turn away from Jesus. He's going to deny him 3 times. Jesus has already told him this. He says, once you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. That's going to be important, because then after the resurrection, this is in St. John chapter 21, he says to Peter, do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Tend my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. In other words, he's telling him that he wants him to be the shepherd. He wants him to lead the flock. And so what does St. Peter say in our first reading here? I exhort you, presbyters. We would translate that priest. All right, some places translate it elders. But we use the English term priest. I exhort the priest among you as a fellow priest and witness to the suffering of Christ, and one who has a share in the glory to be revealed. I'll talk about that on Sunday's Mass. We're doing Romans chapter 8. So if you haven't read Romans chapter 8, go and read Romans chapter 8. That you have a share in the glory to be revealed. Tend the flock in your midst. St. Peter, who has been given this office and this responsibility, he now passes it down to the next level. In England, they have the Queen, and then the Queen has a prime minister. Jesus is the king. Peter is the prime minister. And when Peter dies, then another takes his place, and then another takes his place. All right? You can look it up online. There is a list of all of the popes going back to St. Peter. There are a couple of places where there's some confusion, but basically we have a line from St. Peter all the way up to Pope Francis. It's this office that we are celebrating today. Jesus didn't just say to Peter, I want you to be Pope. He said, I want you to be the first Pope, but this office will continue. I can explain that too from Acts of the Apostles, but then he tells the shepherds how they should be shepherds. And remember, this is by a guy who has fallen on his face numerous times. He is speaking from a place of deep humility. And so he says, don't do your job by constraint, but do it willingly. And don't do it for shameful profit, but eagerly. Don't lord it over those assigned to you, but be examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd, that's Jesus, when the chief shepherd is revealed, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Boy, that's good, isn't it? God's plan. And by the way, again, on Sunday, I'm going to preach on the glory to be revealed in you. But that's enough for today. All right.